Hey guys, Bryce from Trick Tools here, and today I'm going to give you guys a look at the Mini-Max in comparison to the Pullmax. So I want to give you guys a look to see what the differences are between these two machines and why the Mini-Max is a good option for your shop. So for starters, the Mini-Max is a really nice, small, compact machine that is capable of 16 gauge steel on normal work like beading, stepping, those kind of things. So when you compare that to a Pullmax, a Pullmax machine is obviously a very large machine. This machine over here weighs about 2,500 pounds-ish. So it's obviously a large machine, takes up a lot of floor space in your shop. It's not really easily movable. And really, the capabilities of this machine are intended for working with heavier gauge materials, even up to about 1/4 inch on this P6 machine. So there's a variety of different Pullmax machines in different sizes. So depending on what version you might have, there's going to be some different capacity capabilities as far as material and what type of processes you're trying to work with. But the Mini-Max was intended for sheet metal work. So this machine was built to be a nice small machine that you can work sheet metal with in a normal shop setting or even a small shop setting. That's going to give you really the capabilities that you want for sheet metal projects without having to take up a ton of floor space. And this also will keep your power requirements to a minimum as well. Pullmax machine, this one here specifically, it runs on 223 phase power. Whereas the Mini-Max will plug into 110, so you can virtually plug this machine into any outlet in your shop. So really nice in that realm. It is on a rolling base, so if you want to move it over closer to your project, if you're making stuff, want to test fit back and forth, you can roll it right over there and work close to your space, or move it to clean it, and keeps that real easy. So that's a great aspect about the Mini-Max, is its compact size and portability and the ability to plug it in anywhere. So to kind of point out some of the obvious differences, like I said, Mini-Max is obviously small and compact. This has an 18-inch throat depth. Now, Pullmaxes, like I said, they vary in size, so it's going to depend on what model you have or what model you might be looking at. But this P6 has a 42-inch throat depth. Which is great, obviously working on large pieces, that sort of thing. Majority of time, you're not working on something that requires all that throat depth. Spent many years working in shops with Pullmaxes, and the amount of times that you're really truly using that depth is a very small percentage of the time that you're actually using that machine. So, a machine with the throat depth of the Mini-Max is going to allow you to do most anything you want to do. So as far as fence options go, the Mini-Max here, we have this nice adjustable fence set up. There's a couple of bolts here on the side. You can loosen those up and you can move the fence up and down this direction. And then you just loosen up these handles here and you can slide this out, get it set wherever you want it, tighten it up in place, and you're set to go. Now right here on the front of the fence, we have this rolling fence option. And this is great, obviously, for allowing you to roll your piece through and it will move with it. Or because it's obviously round, if your panel has a contour cut in the edge and you're trying to follow a curved shape, it will allow you to turn and move your panel in that same direction to be able to follow curved shapes. So we also have a straight fence option that you'll take these two bolts out of the front of the fence, bolt this in place, and you'll be in business with a straight fence. So some of the differences on that to Pullmax. This Pullmax is actually a pretty decked out machine. Most Pullmax machines that I've seen when they're purchased either don't have a fence or they just have the standard straight fence, which is a typical, it's about yay wide straight fence option, for running down through there. This specific machine though has what they call a duplicator table on it. So it's got this whole setup that rolls on bearings. You can move it front to back and side to side. but that would basically replace the need for a standard fence on this machine. So, but like I said, most of the time when you find a Pullmax machine, if it has a straight fence, you're lucky. If not, you got to try to find one. So, yeah, so as far as the speed capabilities of these machines, Pullmax machine, now this one here, again, being kind of probably a later manufacturer date Pullmax, and having a few of the extra bells and whistles. This one here is basically a 5-speed machine. So you have your slow and fast here, and then you have a gear lever shifter on the side here that basically, depending on what position you have it, will speed up, slow down the machine. And then you can change the stroke pattern of the machine by going one way or the other. This way, locking down these other notches to change the stroke of the machine. So regardless though, with that setup, you are restricted to whatever the machine is set at for those speed settings. Whereas the Mini-Max, this machine here is variable speed. So you got a foot pedal and flip the machine on, and just like the gas pedal in your car, the harder you push on it, the faster it goes. So when you get it going, you can go nice and slow. You can speed it up anywhere in between. And then if you want, you can just go wide open and run your parts through there. So the cool part about this is on the fly adjustment. If you're running something through there, you want to go fast, you want to slow it down, anywhere in between, you can do that with the Mini-Max being variable speed with a foot pedal control. So that really is a nice feature and capability of this machine. So in order to get your material out of the machine, if you, let's say, are running a bead in the middle of a panel and you get done, you get to your spot, you want to take it out, you just pull the pin, flip this back, and it raises up that top die. You can pull your part out, and then same thing. If you're going to put one in there, slide your panel in, and then flip this over, lock it in place, and you're ready to work. So the tooling holders for these two machines are similar in some ways, but different in others. So on a Mini-Max, you have this one bolt back here that is going to be your adjustment as far as front to back and side to side to make sure that you get your dies lined up in the right location. So you get that lined up, tighten up that bolt, and there is also this other little plate back here that just helps give you that extra rigidity to make sure that this thing is going to stay in place. As far as the adjustment on the dies, you have a couple of set screws here. Now this is what actually is going to hold the dies tight in the square opening. So crack those loose on the bottom here. You have this knob that's going to raise and lower that bottom die. So that way you can, once you get this rotated, kind of get it to the bottom of its stroke, you can set your material gap in there. You got that set, and you can tighten up these set screws, and your dies are ready to work. So on a Pullmax machine, how it varies from a Mini-Max is on this machine here, you have the lower die holder, and Pullmax has two different lower die holders. So you have this one here, which is centered. The collet and everything is centered in the die block, and that's going to automatically center your lower die to your upper die and keep that lined up. Now they have an offset tool holder, which will offset the collet and everything forward, and that's going to offset it for the different tooling options, shearing dies and that sort of thing that they had for these machines. So you have that, and then in order to adjust the tooling, same style feature here with a little lever on the bottom. You can turn that and it's going to adjust your clearance. And then in order to tighten this up, there's a collet inside of here. This is your collet nut, and then you're going to tighten that up, get that snug in there, and it's going to hold that. And this die block, in order to change it out, you have this side adjustment here. So once you get that in place, if you're swapping out between the die blocks, then you tighten up this little nut here on the side, and it's going to locate that and tighten it in place. Get that snugged in, and that's ready to go. So yeah, I guess really to just reiterate, the main differences that that I usually tell people when it comes to a Pullmax or a Mini-Max machine is that a Mini-Max, small, compact, low power usage, 18-inch throat, 16 gauge material capacity, or like I guess that would be 16 gauge mild steel. Obviously, if you're doing aluminum, depending on what process you're trying to work, dyes, that sort of thing, you can get away with, you know, maybe slightly thicker material, that sort of thing. But you get your 16 gauge steel capacity on this machine, and it's variable speed. Pullmax, again, depending on what model you have, could be single, 2-speed. This one's 5. There's some different variations as far as that goes. So you're kind of subject to whatever machine you find. This one, obviously 42-inch throat depth. You get the material capacities are greater, obviously, on a big heavy-duty Pullmax like this. So for instance, a 3/8 bead die on this, if you're doing beading, Pullmax rates their machine here on this specific P6 at 10 gauge for beading. Whereas, like I said, we rate the Mini-Max at 16. So again, you get those little bit of capacity differences and that sort of thing, but there's definite drawbacks to having a giant Pullmax machine in your shop too, especially if you're working in a small shop setting. So both great machines. Really, again, just wanted to give you guys a look at the difference between the two and how they work, and you know, let you understand you know, why a Mini-Max can be a great option in your shop. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and run some panels through here. We're going to do some beading with these 3/8 bead dies that are in here. Then we're going to swap out to a step die that's about an 1/8 inch step and run those in as well. We'll show you some different fence stuff on the Mini-Max, and you know, show you guys the two machines working, doing the same exact process. So hopefully you guys get some good information out of that, and we'll show you guys that process right now. All right, so I got this fence adjusted to put the straight fence on, being that we don't have the rolling fence for the Pullmax. So put the straight fence on so we can do a comparison between the two. And now I've got this set up with the 3/8 inch bead die in here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run a bead down this panel on the Mini-Max here. We're gonna run the same 3/8 inch bead on the Pullmax right next to it. That way you guys can see the difference of how both these machines do the same exact bead. So again, this machine here is variable speed, so I'll be able to control that all the way through. And as far as getting your material in and out of the machine, here on the Mini-Max, you have a lever here on the top. You just move that back and forth and it raises that gap up. That way you can easily get your part out of the machine if necessary. Get that set down in that place. So yeah, I've already got my material gap set in here, and got that all dialed in. So we're pretty much ready to bead here, and I'll run this through here and show you guys how this works. Now the beauty of a machine like the Mini-Max here is the fact that you can easily get started, ramp up the speed up to max speed. Now when I'm doing a bead like this, I always find that the faster the machine is running, the smoother the final product of the bead turns out. So got that on there, and I probably could have set the gap a little tighter to actually get a little more profile out of this. So what I'm going to do, actually, before I go over here to the Pullmax, is I'm going to tighten up the gap just a little bit more and run another bead in here to show you guys the depth of how far this machine will go on the first try. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen these bottom set screws just a hair, and I'm going to make sure that you can turn this knob right here and make sure that you're all the way down on your stroke. And then doing that, I'm going to move up the adjuster here, get that up to where I have a nice gap the way I want it. Get that tight, and we're going to run this next bead. Now I always find when doing beads like this, obviously the smoother that you can push your material through, the better. Even though these are machines and they're helping you by obviously running a bead there for you, you're still manually moving it through the machine. So the smoother you can be, the better the bead turns out. Well, it's got a pretty nice bead in there. I did get a little wobbly in the front there, but I'm not afraid to say it. So, you know, as you're running this through there, obviously when you're working on a straight fence, you know, you want to be able to keep that pressure towards the fence as you're pushing it through. So you're not just as necessarily moving straight sideways, you're kind of pushing in and to the side at the same time to try to keep that up against the fence. So that's where I actually really like the rolling fence attachment for the Mini-Max, is that it spins and rolls as you're rolling it through. So it helps, you know, on a straight fence like this, you know, you're getting that little bit of friction on the edge of the panel, because obviously this is stationary and you're trying to move the panel through. So you get that friction. Sometimes it kind of can hang up just a tiny bit, just, you know, as you're rolling through, and the rolling fence really does do a nice job of allowing you to roll that through there without that friction. So at this point, I'm going to jump over here onto the Pullmax and show you guys that. So again, like I said, this machine has the duplicator table, which this all rolls forward. I'm not going to go, I'm basically going to use this as a straight fence, being that this machine doesn't have a straight fence, so or an actual, you know, Pullmax style straight fence. So what I'm going to do is set up my gap here, so that way I can run this bead right next to the bead I just ran on the Mini-Max. So try to get this a little centered up, get that locked in place, and now we can run this right on this edge. So so the machine here has 3 adjustments. This is kind of the slower speed. There's a medium speed and a higher speed as you change that. So I'm gonna go ahead and fire this up. So that's the slow speed. And then we have fast speed. And that is gonna vary also based on where you have this shifter that basically is adding more belt pressure to it. That's gonna speed it up. So as you can see, that right there is pretty quick, and that also is going to change up a little bit. If you come down this way, you can see it's got a little more stroke to it, whereas you go up, it's a little tighter stroke. And then you come down on the other side, and it's a real short stroke. So depending on what profile you're going for is depending on where you're going to want that set. I do have this set basically at the highest speed right now, and we're gonna run this through here. I'm gonna start off with the smallest stroke just to kind of show you guys how that works. And I don't think it's gonna be as good as the other stroke for the beading process. Now, right now, that's doing obviously a nice bead, but the difference is I'm actually having to put a fairly decent amount of pressure into the die to achieve that, because the tooling isn't separating as much. So I'm having to really push it in there to, you know, create that shape. It's coming out pretty smooth, but I'm gonna go ahead and adjust it over here to the little bit longer stroke. And I think what we're gonna have to do is run a little bit of up pressure on the bottom to tighten up the gap, because based on where this is, it actually goes down a little closer on this side than it does on this side. So now we've got a little more up and down movement, and it should be a little bit easier to run this through here. So you can see there we have two really nice beads, 3/8 Mini-Max bead, Pullmax bead. So they both do a nice job, and I would say it required a little more pressure running through the Pullmax as far as actually pushing the panel through there, and that's just based on the amount of separation between the dies, because this is trying to punch a bead. Every time you're moving over, the farther the tooling goes up, the more gap there is, or the more little bit more amount of time you have to be able to move that material over as you're running it through. So both do a really fantastic bead. Both look great, and you know, the Mini-Max can do just as good a job keeping up with a Pullmax machine as far as the beading is concerned on there. So yeah, we're going to switch out tooling to the step dies and then show you guys how those work in both these machines. All right, so I went ahead and switched out the fence on the Mini-Max here to the roller fence, just to give you guys a look at that. And we have 1/8" step dies in the Mini-Max as well as the Pullmax. So we're gonna do a step on each one to be able to show you guys the capabilities of both these machines. So right now I'm gonna do it on both of these machines. I'm going to do the step in a way that I can hopefully put, I'll space out the fence here on the Pullmax. I'll move it back so that I can put the step right next to each other. So I've already got the gap set in here. So there's just enough room for the material in there and a little extra. So as I run this through, these dies have a little bit of a radius cut in them in this way. That way it allows the sheet metal to easily go into the dies on the bottom, and the top die is cut in the reverse direction, obviously, or at least when they're together like this. So yeah, so we're going to run this through, show you guys both these machines on an 1/8 inch step. So there's a nice step from the Mini-Max. So real nice profile here, and so we're going to go ahead and move over to the Pullmax and do the same thing. So there's the Pullmax step on there. So you can see they both have the same profile from the same 1/8 inch step. This, by the way, on both of these, the beading and the stepping here, this is 18 gauge steel. Just went with the 18 gauge because that is truly the most common gauge thickness for the majority of, let's say, automotive restoration type work, 18 to 19 gauge in that range. So went with that. Like I said, the Mini-Max does have a 16 gauge capacity, and really depending on the profiles that you make, if you make your own custom tooling, which can be done for both of these machines, if you've got a pretty aggressive shape, something with a high profile, and even it'd be the same on a Pullmax, but if you're running something with a real high profile, you might have to double pass it on a Mini-Max as well as the Pullmax. So just to kind of get your initial shape going and then come back through and really get that shape a little bit deeper into your panel. So sometimes that can help with keeping the panel flatter, smoother, that sort of thing, keep it from deforming as much. So yeah, there you can see those nice steps on there. The one thing that I really like about using the Mini-Max is just that ability to get the machine wound up pretty quickly. The Mini-Max here actually is running a little bit faster RPM or strokes than the Pullmax here, and I feel that really does help with the smoothness of the bead. When you look through here on both these panels, there's not as much, you don't see all the little individual hammer strokes as much on the Mini-Max as you do the Pullmax, and I think that's just because of the RPM. There's as you're pushing the material through, it's less distance on the panel in between each time that the dies are coming together. So yeah, so again, as far as the differences on these machines, you know, when you're doing sheet metal work, you're going to find that the Mini-Max is a quite capable machine, especially when you compare it to a Pullmax. Again, like I said earlier, the main couple things you get with a Pullmax are throat depth and material capacity. And you know, in a typical sheet metal shop, material capacity isn't really an issue because you can do that on the Mini-Max. And really with the 18-inch throat, when you're working on wide panels, I mean, you can get to the center of a pretty wide panel here on the Mini-Max. So, you know, it is pretty capable in comparison. So, yeah, for more information on the Mini-Max, if you have any questions, you're interested in looking more into the tooling that we offer for the Mini-Max, or even if you have a Pullmax machine and you want to see what tooling we have for that, visit our website, tricktools.com. Give us a call. We can answer any questions you may have on these machines and the difference between the two, and hopefully get you set up with a Mini-Max in your shop. So thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you in the next one.